Tonight, a country singer on a desert road questioned by beings trying to understand human behavior. A man in a Georgia field, frozen as a craft descended, and then they examined him. And a story from 18th century Sicily where a man may have stepped out of time and never truly returned. Welcome to Strange Encounters. Most people imagine UFO encounters happening to scientists or pilots or trained observers, people who know what they're looking at. But in January of 1976, on a dark stretch of desert road outside Las Vegas, the person chosen was a country singer. Johnny Sands was just trying to build a career, driving from one radio station to another, promoting his first album, living the kind of life that keeps you on the road more than at home. He wasn't searching for anything unusual, but that night, something noticed him. And for the next 10 minutes, he found himself face to face with something that didn't seem to understand us, but was trying to. On the night of January 29th, 1976, just after 10 p.m., Johnny Sands was driving back toward Las Vegas along Blue Diamond Road. He had spent the evening visiting radio stations in the surrounding towns, trying to get his music heard. The desert was quiet, empty, completely still. And then he saw it. At first, he thought it was an airplane preparing to land, a bright object in the sky ahead of him, long in shape, moving slowly. In Las Vegas, lights in the sky weren't unusual, so he kept driving. But after a few moments, he realized something wasn't right. The object was matching his movement, keeping pace with his car, holding position above the road. That's when his engine began to fail. Not all at once, but slowly. The car sputtered, lost power, and he was forced to roll to a stop on the side of the road. He stepped out immediately, assuming it was mechanical. First, he checked the gas tank, even giving the car a slight shake, listening for the movement of fuel. There was plenty. He moved to the front, lifted the hood, but before he could focus on the engine, something pulled his attention upward. The object was now directly above him. He would later estimate it to be around 60 feet long, hovering roughly 1,000 feet in the air. Its surface carried a dull metallic tone, somewhere between silvery and rusty orange, depending on how the light caught it. Around its middle was a large circular ring. Along its side, evenly spaced, were what appeared to be windows or portholes. At each end, red and white lights flashed. Then, it began to move away, drifting off toward the desert, illuminating the ground and nearby hills as it went. And then, it descended, landing somewhere beyond the road, no more than a few hundred feet away. Sands turned back to his car, trying to restart it. That's when he noticed something in the distance. At the edge of his headlights, two figures. They were coming toward him. At first, he thought they might be people. And in that moment, alone on a desert road, the possibility was just as frightening. He tried to move, tried to get back into the car, but his body wouldn't respond. He later described it as willing himself to run, but his legs simply refusing, not fully paralyzed, but completely unable to act. The figures kept coming, slowly, steadily. One stopped several feet away, the other moved closer. Just 3 feet from him. Now, he could see them clearly. They were humanoid, but unmistakably not human. Their bodies were strong, well-built, like young men in peak physical condition, but their faces didn't match. They appeared ancient, not aged in the way humans age, but carrying a presence that felt far older than their bodies suggested. Their heads were completely bald. No eyebrows, no eyelashes, no facial hair. Their skin appeared gray, slightly squared in texture. Their eyes were small, jet black, with glowing centers that carried a faint pinkish-red hue. Their noses were flattened, their mouths thin, unmoving, even when they spoke. On either side of their faces, strange gill-like flaps shifted slightly, like something breathing or processing the air. They stood just under 6 feet tall, thin, around 150 pounds. They wore seamless, tight-fitting overalls, dark in color with a faint silver sheen, with no visible seams or fastenings. Across their bodies ran a white strap from shoulder to waist, connected to a white belt. From that belt hung small metallic objects, each about an inch long. And as they moved, something about it felt wrong. They didn't walk normally. They advanced in short, measured motions, almost as if they were sliding forward in small increments, 3 feet at a time. There was no sound, no footsteps, just movement, quiet and controlled. At one point, one of them brushed against Sand's arm. The fabric felt rough, like heavy-duty sandpaper. Then they began to speak. The voice didn't match the movement. Their mouths never opened, but the words were clear. They asked him why he was there. He told them he was an entertainer working in Las Vegas. That answer led to another question. Why did people come to the city? Sands tried to explain. Tourism, gambling, entertainment, the draw of the lights. Then came another question. What is your means of communication? He hesitated. The question didn't make sense. He tried to explain that humans communicate in many ways, but the being interrupted him, telling him to answer the question. He tried again, still unsure what they wanted. At that point, the two beings turned toward each other, and for nearly 2 minutes, they simply stared. Completely still, as if exchanging information without speaking. Then, one of them produced something, a small silver sphere. It hovered in the air between them, rotating slowly, as if suspended by something unseen. Sands watched as they focused on it before turning back to him. At some point during the exchange, they spoke of human activity, specifically nuclear explosions. They suggested that these events were occurring in sequences, patterns, something they were aware of. And then a statement, ambiguous, unsettling. They implied they might stop it, or maybe they wouldn't. Finally, the encounter came to an end. One of the beings looked at him and spoke slowly, deliberately. Don't say anything about this meeting. We know where you are, and we will see you again. Then they turned and moved back into the darkness. Moments later, a bright flash of light rose from the desert. The object lifted and seemed to melt into the night sky, gone in seconds. The desert fell silent again, and just as suddenly, his car came back to life. The engine started instantly. The headlights returned to full brightness, as if nothing had happened. Sands drove straight back to Las Vegas and reported the encounter. Police directed him to Nellis Air Force Base, but there he was told no investigation was taking place and that radar had picked up nothing unusual. However, that wasn't entirely true. Later reports confirmed that multiple witnesses in the area had seen an unusual object that same night, matching both the description and the timeline. Sands would later undergo a polygraph test. On all key questions, his answers were described as not consistent with deception criteria, and yet he refused to reveal everything. He claimed the beings told him more, but that sharing it would be a breach of trust. Less than 2 weeks later, he was approached by a television production company. They wanted to recreate the encounter. He agreed, but during the return trip to the desert, something strange happened. At one point, he overheard a conversation. "What will we do with him? He's already heard too much." Concerned, he tried to leave the car, but as he pushed the door open, something stopped him. Two indistinct forms, described only as fuzzy, pressed against the door from the outside, forcing it shut. He couldn't get out, no matter how hard he tried. The next thing he clearly remembered was being back in Las Vegas, with gaps in his memory. Later, he wondered if he had been drugged. He admitted to having a few drinks that evening, and some believe the entire incident may have been a staged attempt to provoke a reaction for filming, but no explanation was ever confirmed. The Johnny Sands encounter is unusual, not because it's dramatic, but because of how precise it feels. The beings didn't act randomly. They asked specific questions, focused questions, about human behavior, communication, and activity. Their interest in nuclear events mirrors a pattern seen in other encounters from the same era. And then there's the choice of witness, a country singer, alone, on a desert road, returning from a routine night of work. Not someone trained to observe, not someone expecting anything, just someone passing through. But maybe that's exactly the point, because encounters like this don't happen in controlled environments. They happen in quiet places to people who aren't prepared for them, which leaves one final detail, one that Johnny Sands himself repeated later, that during the encounter, he was given the impression that whatever he had met that night wasn't finished with him, and that within a year, they would be back. On the morning of August 6, 1977, in a quiet rural stretch of southern Georgia, a 63-year-old man set out for a simple walk. It was the kind of routine that rarely changes, a short path from his trailer, past the fence line, toward a pond he knew well. He brought his 2 dogs with him, expecting nothing more than a peaceful look at the water before returning home. But within minutes, something descended out of the sky and stopped him in his tracks, literally. Tom Dawson would later claim that he, his dogs, and even the cattle in a nearby field were all frozen in place by an unseen force, as the silent, circular craft settled just feet above the ground in front of him, and what stepped out of that craft would leave him shaken enough to be hospitalized. This is the Dawson Encounter. At approximately 10:30 that morning, Dawson had just stepped through the fence surrounding the pond when the object appeared. He described it as a circular craft hovering only a few feet above the ground. It measured roughly 40 to 50 feet in diameter and stood about 12 to 15 feet high. Around its outer edge were evenly spaced portholes, and a dome rose from the top. The entire object shifted colors rapidly, though it made no sound at all. There was no warning, no gradual approach. One moment the field was still, and the next the craft was there. At the same instant, Dawson lost all control of his body. He couldn't move his arms or legs. He couldn't turn his head. His dogs were frozen mid-motion, and in the distance, cattle stood motionless as if time itself had been paused. Then, a hatch opened on the side of the craft. A ramp extended downward, touching the ground, and 7 figures emerged. Dawson described them as human-like, but clearly not human. They stood around 5 feet tall, completely hairless, with skin as white as a flour sack. Their ears were pointed, their noses sharp and slightly turned upward, and most strikingly, their heads seemed to sit directly on their shoulders with no visible neck. There were 5 males and 2 females. Some wore tight-fitting one-piece suits, others appeared completely nude. The clothed figures had what Dawson described as unusual footwear, soft, almost silk-like shoes with pointed curled toes. They moved cautiously at first. The first being stepped down the ramp slowly, as if testing the ground beneath it. Once satisfied, the others followed. 2 remained near the entrance, standing watch, while the rest approached Dawson. They spoke among themselves in high-pitched voices, but the language was incomprehensible to him, fast, sharp, and almost mechanical. Then they began what Dawson could only interpret as an examination. One of the beings placed a skullcap-like device over his head. Attached cords ran from the cap to a larger instrument, something like a wide hoop connected to a box with dials or controls. They lowered his trousers and lifted his shirt, exposing his body as they worked. The hoop was passed slowly over him, scanning from head to toe. Dawson remained completely paralyzed, unable to resist or even react. At some point during the procedure, he became aware of something even stranger. From inside the craft, a voice rang out, loud, clear, and entirely separate from the beings around him. It repeated the same phrase several times. "I am Jimmy Hoffa." Jimmy Hoffa was a powerful American labor leader who had vanished under mysterious circumstances just 2 years earlier in 1975. His disappearance became one of the most widely known unsolved cases in the United States, surrounded by rumors, speculation, and organized crime theories. The words were spoken 3 times in succession. A 4th attempt began, but cut off abruptly as if interrupted. Then the voice was gone. The beings showed no visible reaction. They continued their work. As suddenly as it had begun, the examination ended. A few of the figures gathered what Dawson described as leaves and things from the ground nearby, as if collecting samples. Most of them returned to the craft, but 2 remained behind. They stepped a short distance away and appeared to confer with one another. Their voices were still too high and rapid to understand clearly, but Dawson had the distinct impression they were discussing him. He would later say he believed they were deciding whether or not to take him with them. At one point, he thought he heard a word, Jupiter, spoken during their exchange. After a brief discussion, one of the beings made a gesture. It passed its hand across its chest in a motion that Dawson interpreted as some form of acknowledgement, or perhaps even a farewell. The 2 figures returned to the craft, the ramp retracted, the hatch closed. The object rose smoothly to an estimated height of about 75 feet. Then, in an instant, it was gone. No sound, no trail, no gradual acceleration, just empty sky. In the same moment, Dawson regained control of his body. He ran up the slope, across roughly 300 yards, back toward his trailer. By the time he reached help, he was struggling to breathe and barely able to speak. The only words he could manage were simple and urgent. Spaceship. He was taken to the hospital, where doctors treated him for severe emotional distress. Reports described him as shaken, both mentally and physically, after the encounter. He was later released, but the experience stayed with him. Dawson would go on to say that he believed if he had been younger, they might have taken him. The Dawson Encounter is classified as a close encounter of the third kind, an event involving both a structured craft and its occupants at close range, and in many ways it fits the pattern remarkably well. There's the sudden appearance of a silent craft, the immobilization of the witness and nearby animals, the presence of humanoid beings, the clinical, almost detached nature of the examination, and the abrupt departure, leaving the witness physically and emotionally affected. These elements appear again and again in similar reports from around the world, but this case also includes details that push it into far stranger territory. The beings themselves do not match the now familiar gray archetype often associated with UFO encounters. Their appearance is more unusual, almost reminiscent of something older, more folkloric in nature. And then there's the voice, the repeated declaration, "I am Jimmy Hoffa." At the time of this encounter, Hoffa's disappearance was still a relatively recent mystery, unsolved, widely discussed, and deeply embedded in public consciousness. Its sudden appearance in the middle of an alleged extraterrestrial encounter is difficult to explain. Some researchers suggest it may represent a form of psychological overlay, an attempt by the human mind to interpret something incomprehensible. Others consider the possibility of memory distortion, or even that the phenomenon itself has the ability to manipulate perception in unexpected ways. There are also those who point to a recurring theme in certain close encounter cases, moments of absurdity that seem almost deliberately out of place, as if the experience is not only physical but symbolic or performative in ways we don't yet understand. Then there is the question of intent. The beings examined Dawson, they collected samples, they communicated among themselves, and at least for a moment, they appeared to consider taking him, but they chose not to. Why? Was it his age, as he believed? Or was there some other criteria, something about him or about the situation that led them to leave him behind? There are no clear answers, only the account of one man who found himself standing in a field on an ordinary morning, unable to move, as something entirely unknown stepped out of a silent craft and studied him. Encounters like this challenge the idea that these events are purely mechanical or easily explained, because when you combine precise, almost clinical behavior with moments of complete unpredictability, it suggests a phenomenon that may not operate in ways we expect, something that can appear physical but doesn't always behave logically, something that observes, evaluates, and then disappears without explanation, leaving behind only a story and a question. What really happened in that field in Georgia on that quiet morning in 1977? In the spring of 1753, in the city of Catania, Sicily, a man is said to have vanished in broad daylight, not in a storm, not at sea, not in war, but in the open courtyard of a castle estate surrounded by witnesses. His name was Alberto Gordoni. Described in later accounts as a respected local artisan, he was reportedly walking across the yard of a noble residence on May 3rd during the daytime when something extraordinary happened. Without warning, he disappeared. According to the story, his wife stood only a short distance away. Also present were other onlookers, including a nobleman referred to as the Duke of Zanini. There was no flash, no smoke, no collapse of earth beneath him. One moment, Alberto Gordoni was crossing the yard. The next moment, he was gone. The witnesses were said to have rushed to the exact spot. They searched for hidden pits, loose stones, openings in the ground. They dug into the earth itself, believing perhaps he had fallen through some concealed cavity. Nothing was found. No hollow space, no tunnel, no disturbance of soil. It was as if the man had simply ceased to exist. Years passed. Life in Catania continued. The event, however, was never forgotten, at least according to the legend. Then, 22 years later, something even stranger reportedly occurred. Alberto Gordoni reappeared in the same courtyard, in the same location. He was said to have appeared suddenly in full view exactly where he had vanished more than 2 decades earlier. But to Alberto, no time had passed. When questioned, he allegedly insisted that he had not disappeared at all. From his perspective, only a brief interval had occurred between moments. He had been walking and then found himself elsewhere. His mental state alarmed authorities, and he was reportedly confined to a rest home for the feeble-minded. 7 years later, a physician identified in modern retellings as Father Mario spoke with him in detail. Unlike others, the doctor was said to have taken Alberto seriously, and this is where the account becomes even more unusual. Alberto claimed that on the day of his disappearance, he suddenly found himself inside something like a tunnel. He described moving along it toward a vague white light. He reported seeing no familiar landmarks. Instead, he described strange mechanisms, objects or structures that were entirely unknown to him, unrecognizable in purpose or design. He then encountered something he described as a large canvas covered in stars and pulsing dots of light. The lights, he said, seemed to move independently. There, he claimed, he met a tall, thin, human-like figure with long hair. The figure appeared female. This entity allegedly told him that he had fallen into a cleft, a fissure, in time and space. Returning him, she said, would be difficult. While waiting, Alberto claimed he was told of holes opening in darkness, of white drops, of thoughts moving at the speed of light, of souls without bodies, of bodies without souls, of flying cities inhabited by eternally young beings. According to the story, Father Mario became convinced that Alberto believed every word he was saying. So convinced, in fact, that he brought Alberto back to the courtyard where the original disappearance had occurred. And there, before witnesses once again, Alberto reportedly stepped forward and vanished. This time, forever. Father Mario, the story says, crossed himself and ordered the location fenced off. He allegedly referred to it as the trap of the devil. It's a remarkable narrative, but here's where we must pause. There are no surviving 18th century Sicilian church records confirming the event, no legal documents recording the disappearance of a respected artisan before noble witnesses, no state archives referencing such a disturbance, no documented Duke of Zanini in Sicilian peerage list of the period. The earliest traceable source for this account appears in modern paranormal publications, including a Ukrainian newspaper article from 2005 titled The Trap of the Devil. That absence of primary documentation raises serious questions. Several elements of the story also contain language that feels strikingly modern. The idea of a cleft in time and space reflects concepts that only entered popular vocabulary after developments in 20th century physics. Descriptions of thoughts moving at the speed of light rely on scientific language that would not have existed in 1753 rural Sicily. Even the tunnel toward white light strongly resembles modern near-death experience reports, widely documented only in recent decades. If an event like this had truly been recorded in 18th century Italy, it likely would have been framed in purely religious terms as demonic deception, divine punishment, or perhaps a passage into purgatory. Instead, the narrative blends mystical language with ideas that echo modern science fiction. So, what are we looking at? It may be a modern fabrication projected backward in time. It may be an older folktale later reinterpreted through contemporary ideas about dimensions and space-time. Or it may be an example of how legends evolve, absorbing the language of each era that retells them. Yet, despite the lack of documentation, the story persists. Why? Because it touches something deeply unsettling. The idea that space itself might tear open without warning, that time might not flow as steadily as we believe, that an ordinary courtyard in broad daylight could conceal a hidden fracture. Whether Alberto Gordoni ever existed may ultimately be beside the point. What matters is the enduring image, a man walking across familiar ground, a step forward, and then nothing. Thank you for watching. If you found these cases interesting, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Which of these encounters stands out to you the most? And what do you think really happened? I'll see you in the next episode of Strange Encounters.